Good morning. It is supposed to be 105 degrees today, which means I am out here very early to harvest a bunch of Roma tomatoes. We're going to try a new recipe today. We are going to make pancetta, which I've made many times. Not pancetta, bruschetta. Pancetta is like a bacon. It's a cured pork belly. We're not making that today. We're making bruschetta, which is a tomato it's an Italian tomato topping on bread. It's fabulous, but I found a recipe to can that, so we're going to try that today. So I'm out here in the Roma tomato patch, and I'm going to pick all these tomatoes that are ripe. There are a lot of them. I was actually out here yesterday, and it was 100 and something crazy. I harvested a ton of stuff. I brought stuff in, and then life got a little busy, so I never came back out to collect all this stuff that I harvested. Some of it I just laid on the edge of the garden beds, and so we need to collect those today as well. Tomatoes are kind of fascinating because they ripen from the inside out, and you can actually harvest green tomatoes and have them sit on your counter, and you can have them ripen inside. You don't have to have them ripen on the vine. So most commercially grown tomatoes are picked when they are green, and what that does is it allows from wherever they're harvested during the shipping process that they ripen during shipping. I am letting mine mostly ripen on the vine. Last year, because I was in the middle of moving during garden season, I harvested most of them green, and I was able to control it a little bit better because I wasn't in my garden every day. This year, I'm letting the majority of them ripen outside. I'm kind of picking them when they're 80-ish, 90% ripe, and then I'll finish ripening them inside. Did not realize I forgot to collect these peppers last night too. That's what happens when you're a busy mom, I guess. Get these in here. All these tomatoes that I'm picking from the side of these garden beds, these are all tomatoes that I picked last night. I went out into the garden. That's the thing. I can let most of them ripen outside because I'm in the garden every day. Last year I wasn't in my garden, but maybe once or twice a week, so I was harvesting more of them when they were green, but I can keep a lot closer eye on them this year. But I went out there and I didn't have a basket, so I just set them there, and then I never had time to run out and get them, so nothing like doing it right now. I did not realize how many green beans need to be harvested. I'm going to go ahead and harvest these green beans. There is so many more tomatoes that I did not realize that I had picked and left on the side of the garden bed. But that's why we're out here this morning. It's already getting hot. We're gonna get this stuff while it's early, bring it inside, and enjoy spending time in the kitchen where it's a little bit cooler today. Friend, I think this is going to be the first year where I do not buy any tomatoes from a local farm. I think I am going to be able to grow all of our tomatoes that we need for one entire year, if not more, this year. So today is just the start of tomato preservation. I've got a lot of plans of things I want to make this year, things that I've never made before. So bruschetta is one thing that I have made fresh, and we've eaten it fresh, but I've never preserved it before, so I'm excited to try that. The next things, we don't get to these today. This is going to be in a different preservation video, but we are going to make tomato jam this year and diced tomatoes. I've never canned diced tomatoes before. This bruschetta is actually what gives me the idea to do diced tomatoes. So let's head inside and get preserving. So here is the harvest. Tons of tomatillos, green beans, a massive amount of tomatoes, a couple of cucumbers, another thing of tomatoes, and there's peppers buried in this basket. Plus yesterday I harvested all these tomatoes and all the tomatoes that were on the vine that had anything that needed to be put away right away. I already went ahead and bagged up and threw in the freezer for when I get to some canning project where I'm going to be cooking down the tomatoes. Now, before we get to the bruschetta, I want to actually switch gears just a little bit and process some of these plums. We harvested these plums the other day together, and I'm gonna turn these plums here into plum sauce. So I need to wash these because I haven't washed the plums yet. They've just been sitting in the refrigerator waiting for me. We've been eating them fresh, but I need to start doing some things with them. I also harvested 2 red onions because we're gonna be making Asian plum sauce. And I need some onion. I have my pot I'm gonna cook the plum sauce in, and I've got my bowl that I'm gonna measure my plums with. I have my pot that I'm gonna cook my plum sauce in here because I need to pit these and take the stems off. So I'm gonna take my stems and I'm gonna put them in my compost bowl, and I do need to measure out how many plums I need, and I need 10 cups. So I'm gonna measure my plums into this measuring cup. And we're going to blend this sauce up so I don't need to take the skins off or anything. This is an Asian plum sauce that I got out of my canning cookbook. We're going to blend this sauce up so I don't need to take the skins off or anything. This is an Asian plum sauce that I got out of my canning cookbook. These plums are plums that I picked from the orchard here on this homestead. They're absolutely beautiful. There is no signs of bug damage whatsoever, and I'm really, really happy with them. Josh has been enjoying eating them. They are so good. I did realize though when I first started pitting them that I should not be pitting them over the sink. I should be pitting them over my measuring bowl because my measuring bowl can trap the juice that kind of comes out of the plum as I'm cutting them. So what I did is I've got a bunch of these in my refrigerator, a ton of them. This is just some of them. And so I went through and I harvested out of the refrigerator the ones that were the most ripe because they'll continue to ripen in my refrigerator. And so I wanted to make sure I wasn't leaving any of the ones that I was going to deal with today that were really soft in my refrigerator. I wanted to turn those into sauce. That way we can keep as many of the plums fresh in the refrigerator for fresh eating for as long as possible. Here's our other 5 cups of plums. And then I diced up, roughly chopped I should say, our onions that I harvested. We're going to get this on the stove. I'm going to start the cooking process. This has quite a few more ingredients it needs added to it, but I can get the cooking process going while I grab the other ingredients. So now I'm going to add salt. Now I'm going to add 1 cup of white sugar, 2 cups of brown sugar, 1 cup of apple cider vinegar at 5% acidity, garlic, some chili peppers, ginger, and dried mustard. Now this is gonna simmer away for 20 minutes and then we'll move on to the next step. While this is simmering, I can put away the garlic and the peppers back in the freezer. And we can make our bruschetta sauce on the stove because this needs to come to a boil before we can pack our tomatoes and our bruschetta into the jars. So over here on this side of the stove, I need to get a pot out and let's look at, so the plum sauce is on page 281. You all know this book. I can link it down below. And then the bruschetta is on page 223. And we need, we needed that garlic. So to this pot, I'm gonna add 3 pucks of garlic, 1 cup of water, 1/4 cup of sugar, 2 cups of white distilled vinegar at 5% acidity, 2 cups of white wine. I opened this bottle for a recipe and I didn't use it all. And this is what inspired me to make this recipe, is I needed to use up this bottle of white wine, and I thought that this would be a fun project. And then we need some balsamic vinegar. We're gonna bring this to a boil. We're gonna let everything dissolve. And while this is going, we can get going on prepping the tomatoes for this recipe. I almost forgot I need to add some basil to our bruschetta brine. But first I want to get this plum sauce mixed up. And this smells incredible. This is 100% homegrown veggies in this plum sauce. Now I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of crushed basil. Now it's time to prep our Roma tomatoes, just meaning we need to wash them and get them ready. The cool thing about this recipe is you do not have to peel these tomatoes, which saves an amazing step. We just have to dice them. The recipe says it is best to use a plum or Roma style tomato because they're not as juicy and you want them to hold their shape. So that's what I'm going to use today because I have enough of them. I'm going to pick out the ripest ones to use for today. The ones that are not as ripe, I'll let them sit on the counter and we will process those into something else a little bit later. But I do need to wash these tomatoes, and so that's what I'm going to do first. So these ones that are not quite as ripe, I'm just going to set them aside. Now we get to prep these washed tomatoes. So we need for this recipe, for one recipe, 9 cups of chopped tomatoes. Now I went ahead and made a double batch of the brine because I didn't know how many tomatoes here I was gonna get. So I can do up to 18 cups of diced tomatoes. And I'm gonna keep them a little bit bigger because they are gonna go through the canning process. I want to have them not just completely fall apart. I just sharpened my knife and it's sliding through these tomatoes beautifully. So I have my compost bowl over here. So I'm gonna create a little bit of an assembly line, so hopefully this goes pretty quickly. I've got my measuring cup here. I've got a bowl for compost. I'm just slicing the tip of the tomato off. I think I'm gonna run 3 slices through each half and then 3 this way. And I can measure out my tomatoes into this, and then I can put them in there and I can count how many tomatoes I have for putting into the jars. One tomato product that I've never had on my pantry shelf that I have made personally, I mean, I've purchased it at the grocery store before, but I have never jarred it up myself, are diced tomatoes. Now this right here gave me the idea of why in the world have I never canned diced tomatoes before? Because this was so easy. So I do plan to can, when I have enough Roma tomatoes that are ripe, diced tomatoes. I don't want to use my slicing tomatoes if possible. I want to use Romas because they kind of hold their texture a little bit better. And that's my goal for the next big round of Roma tomatoes that are going to come in from the garden. Now these tomatoes, the recipe did not call to peel them, so I am not peeling them. But when I do can my diced tomatoes, I do plan to peel them. I've been researching and reading different methods on how to do it. Hot pack versus cold pack, meaning do you heat the tomatoes up before you put them in the jar, or do you put them in cold, things like that. And I'm still deciding on which way I want to do it. So if you all have any recommendations on if you have canned diced tomatoes before, and if you prefer canning them using a cold pack method or a hot pack method, if you have a preference. In the past, when I have canned and I do the hot pack method, meaning I heat the tomatoes or the peppers or whatever it is, and I heat the liquid and I put hot stuff in the jar and then I can it. That's hot pack versus cold pack is you would put just room temperature tomatoes in a jar with room temperature liquid, and you would put that into room temperature water in the canner and can that. From my experience in the past, when I hot pack, I can usually get more into a jar, such as peppers. I can get more peppers in a jar when I hot pack versus cold pack. But I'm thinking with tomatoes, because they're so tender and I don't really want them to get mushy, and so I want them to be cooked as little as possible, because they will have to water bath can for 45 minutes, I believe. Don't quote me on that because I'm not sure. I'm not looking at the recipe right now. So I don't know if I want to heat them up first before I put them in the jar. So any suggestions, please send them my way, because that's going to be my next big tomato project. And you know what? I could do both and see which one I like the best. That's probably what I should do, is do a little bit of both and see which one turns out the best, because I know everyone has their own preference on different things. In general, cold packing is faster because you're missing a step, but sometimes your product can be better if you hot pack. So it's always just weighing time versus, what you want your end product to be. So I'm just dicing these tomatoes, filling my measuring cup and dumping them in the bowl, and I am keeping track of how many tomatoes I am dicing up. We got all of our tomatoes we need for our bruschetta, and now we can start filling our jars. I did go ahead and put a lid on our plum sauce because that is simmering away, and I wish you could smell it. It smells incredible. This is our brine, but before I fill our jars, I want to get some water on to start boiling, so as soon as we fill our jars, we can put our bruschetta in the canner. The first thing I like to do when I'm packing my jars, where I have a liquid that's separate from the actual product, like the tomato, is I like to start with a little bit of liquid, and that just helps prevent air bubbles. So I'm just gonna get a little bit of our liquid in each one of these jars. And then what I like to do is go back and put some of our tomatoes. And I like to fill the jars with the liquid and the tomatoes at the same time, and I just feel like that helps prevent air bubbles. Now, of course, we will debubble this. We need to leave an inch head space. So that's probably perfect. This is homegrown too. I mean, I didn't make the 5% vinegar solution, I guess, or the wine, but the herbs, the garlic, and the tomatoes are all homegrown. The recipe did say you can kind of squeeze out the tomato juice if you want to, or remove the seeds. But what I'm doing is I don't really want to put any pressure on these tomatoes, so I'm just kind of gently picking them up and letting any of the liquid kind of drip back into the bowl, so I can just leave any of the extra liquid in the bowl and the seeds and things like that. But I'm not doing any extra step to remove any extra liquid or any of the seeds or anything like that. So I'm just going to keep filling these up and seeing how many jars we can get with these tomatoes. I have this much brine left and I want to use all of it. So I just washed up some more tomatoes. I'm gonna get these sliced up into the jars. I'm gonna try to use up all that brine. I think I'll be able to get one more jar with this amount of liquid. I can still fit a couple more tomatoes in 2 of these jars. The smell of this is amazing. I'm so excited to try this and see if we like it. We got 8 jars. When I washed my jars this morning in the dishwasher, I went ahead and I threw my lids and my rings in there too. So everything is super clean and ready to go into the canning process. So each one of my jars is gonna get a new lid and a ring. I'll go back and tighten them just a little bit. Look how beautiful. I think our plum sauce is basically done. I'm gonna put the lid back on, and what we're gonna do is get our bruschetta into the canner. Now we get to get these in the canner. So this is not very warm because that brine was not super warm. So my water is just warm. I don't want to shock my jars. So we're gonna get these in here. And I still have to look to see how long this needs to can for, the canning time. And I still can't find my water bath canner, which is weird because that's 2 really large things, because I have 2 of them to lose. So I'm still just using my 30-quart stock pot. I don't think I donated them or anything like that, but maybe I did. I can't remember. So we're going to put these in here. I'm gonna turn the stove on back to high. I'm gonna get these boiling. And let's look and see how long these need to water bath can for once they come to a boil. So it looks like 20 minutes and our plum sauce is very hot and it is ready for the next step. And it needs to water bath can for 20 minutes. So we might be able to blend that plum sauce up, have it piping hot in the jars. We might be able to fit it in here and have them process at the same time. We'll just see. Can you see the color of this plum sauce? It is absolutely stunning. So I'm going to blend this up. Be very, very careful when you're doing this because it's hot. That's why I'm not moving this blender around, because I don't want to burn myself. All right, that looks incredible. So let's give this a taste test. Probably one of the prettiest things I've ever made. I think the next thing I'm gonna make, I wasn't planning on doing this, but it is only 9:30. We started early and I have a little bit of time. I think I'm gonna make a plum hot sauce too. Oh my goodness. Wow. That is delicious. So this will be used for Asian style dinners. I could marinate chicken in this. I could make pho, and then, you know, plum sauce is traditionally eaten with pho, things like that. So let's get this jarred up. This plum sauce is incredible. It's going to be a delicious chicken marinade. It's going to be great on rice if you just need like a sauce instead of using like teriyaki or something like that. And then, of course, traditionally, you know, plum sauce, or using it as an ingredient in like an Asian style dressing or something like that. I'm so excited to have this on our pantry shelf, and the color is stunning. You all know the drill of this part. You fill your jars to the proper headspace. Each recipe has a specific headspace, and then you wipe the rims, you put a new lid on, and you put a ring on it. Now you'll notice that I'm not using my favorite lids for jar lids. I'm just using lids that I've already had. I had bought some jars last year and they had lids that came with them, and I figured I might as well use these up. Well, I had one of these jars not seal. I've been using 4-jar lids for almost 2 canning seasons, and I've never had one jar not seal. And anytime I use another brand, I always have seal failures. It's not a big deal. I just put it in the fridge and we'll go through it. But it is kind of frustrating when you have a seal failure. So if you need good canning lids, I'll link them down below, not these ones. These Plum sauce jars are very, very hot. My water is very, very hot. So I think I can get them in this canner. I don't know if I'll be able to get everything in it, but if I'm gonna make a hot sauce today too, I'll be able to run whatever I don't fit in this session in the next one. I'm looking for my tongs. Found them. These projects are going really quickly because this bruschetta, you didn't have to cook down the tomatoes or peel the tomatoes or do anything like that. So it was a very, very fast project. So if we love it, it's a great way to preserve tomatoes. I'm excited to try it. I'm excited to make some homemade bread and toast it up and serve some bruschetta. I used to love wide mouth jars, and the longer I've been canning, the more and more I've been drawn to regular mouth jars. I don't know why, but I love regular mouth jars now. Okay, I can get all but 4 in there, so we'll just do these in the next round. And I had asked you all about a steam canner. So many of you said you love a steam canner. I don't think I read one comment saying that you don't love your steam canner if you have a steam canner. So I don't know if I'm gonna invest in a steam canner this canning season, but definitely before next harvest season, I will be investing in a steam canner. I can link a steam canner down below if you're interested in checking it out and what that all entails. Lid back on. And now let's get going on a plum hot sauce. Now I need to look up a recipe because I have never made plum hot sauce and I need a recipe. I just washed out the pot that I made the brine for the bruschetta, and that stuff smells so good. I don't think there's going to be a plum hot sauce recipe. I don't even think there's a hot sauce recipe in this book. All the hot sauce recipes I have made, I have found online. Yeah, I don't see one in here for that. So let's check my phone and see if I can find one online. All right, I found one. I will link this recipe down below. And this is not a canning recipe. This is just a plum hot sauce recipe. To my plums, we're gonna cook together some sugar, garlic. I've got some red chili peppers here, some really hot ones, and some not so hot ones. I'm gonna put all different kinds in here. I have red jalapenos, red cayenne peppers. These are the red jalapenos, these are the red cayenne peppers. And then in the bottom, and these little red ones are Chinese 5-color peppers. Get those in there. I'm gonna turn this on. The last ingredient is vinegar. Now we're gonna boil this for 20 minutes with the lid on it. I almost forgot to add salt. The water bath canner is officially boiling, so I'm gonna set the timer for 20 minutes. This is boiling, it's very hot, but it's boiling, and that needs to simmer for a good 15 to 20 minutes. So what I think I'm gonna do now is kind of clean up my mess a little bit. I've been able to kind of clean as I go. I just got the dishwasher unloaded and loaded, but I need to do something with these. I'm not actually gonna process them, but it's that time of year where I end up setting up a table in my kitchen because the tomatoes are just so abundant. So it's time to get a table set up so that the ones that aren't fully ripe, I can lay out, and as they ripen, I can either process them into their final product, or I can get them in the freezer so that later then I can turn them into their final product. So what I'm gonna do now, I'm just gonna buckle down and start kind of taking care of things, because I have 20 minutes for the things to be boiling and processing. So we're gonna get that going. The first thing I'm actually gonna do is take care of these tomatoes. These are tomatoes I picked last night and I brought inside and I washed them up, but I did not sadly take all these stems off, is what I should have done. And I have an idea for these cherry tomatoes. I am going to, let me show you, vacuum seal them. I like to make a roasted cherry tomato pasta. Have you guys seen that viral TikTok feta pasta? Well, you can make it a bunch of different ways. And I think that if I freeze these cherry tomatoes whole, I can just dump these out into a baking dish and I can roast them and turn them into a pasta sauce that way. So that's what I'm gonna do. This is an experiment, never done this before, so we'll see how it goes. I'm gonna put in each one of these food saver bags what I think will be the equivalent of about 1 recipe's worth of tomatoes in each bag. I am going to remove the stems. Now, one thing, I don't know why I don't do this, but I should probably start removing the stems out in the garden. I do that when I harvest green beans. I actually take my nail and I pinch the green bean and I leave the stem part on the plant, because that saves me a step when I come inside. And I should probably start doing that with tomatoes, but I've never thought about that until just now. Maybe I'll start doing that, maybe I won't, but I can use these cherry tomatoes however I want, but I'm preserving them in the mind of thinking to use them in roasted pasta sauces. There's a couple different ways I've done that, and it's really good, really easy. You just take your tomatoes, you put them in a baking dish, cover them with some olive oil, salt, and pepper. You can put different kinds of cheese. The TikTok viral recipe one is you put a block of feta and you let that roast for about 25 minutes or so, and it gets ooey and gooey, and then you put pasta in it, and it's really delicious. But I've done it a couple different ways. That's just one way to do it. So I'm just gonna vacuum seal these, and I'm gonna get them in the freezer. I'm keeping my vacuum sealer plugged in on this, what is this called? This is a countertop in my walk-in pantry, because I'm using it so often right now. Instead of getting it out and putting it away, getting it out, putting it away, I'm just leaving it set up all the time in the walk-in pantry, and then at the end of food preservation season, I can put it away. But I'm not having to take it out and put it in my kitchen either. I can just keep it there, and it's just really convenient. Now here's the table. Every year I start folding out tables, and it starts getting covered in produce. And today is the day that this is officially happening, and it just lets me keep a better inventory on all of the produce that is coming into the house. So some of these need to go in the freezer right away, and by doing this, I'm going to inspect each one, and I'll set aside the ones that need to go in the freezer for future processing. But this way, if they're laid out like this, I can keep a way better track on how things are ripening and making sure they're not going bad on the vine. If they're in the basket, it's hard to know if one has gone bad, and it allows me to easy access to grab and eat them. See, like this tomato, it's cracked, and I need to wash it, cut out this part, probably slice the end of this off, and freeze that. This table will probably be here until October, and I might even have to pull out another table because there are so many tomatoes on the vines. This is going to be a good tomato year. It's been an incredible zucchini year, and it's just a huge blessing. So I'm not going to let myself buy any tomatoes from any local farmers this year. Every year I'm always worried that I'm not going to be able to grow enough, and so I supplement with local farmers. But I'm not going to let myself do that this year, because I think we're going to be able to grow enough for 1 year's worth of tomatoes. I need to get these tomatillos washed and in the freezer. So I've had a couple questions. How do you know when your tomatillo is ripe? One, it fills out your paper, or its paper. It has a husk paper on it, and it starts to crack the husk because it's gotten so big like this. These are two different varieties, but they're both just as good, and you can kind of see This one has split the husk. So I'm gonna get these washed. I'm also gonna get my peppers washed. I'm gonna get the peppers sliced up and put into the freezer. I'm gonna get these sliced up and put in the freezer, and when I have enough to process, I will process them. And then the green beans, I am going to just put in the refrigerator, and I am going to try pressure canning some green beans this year and see if we like that. But we'll actually probably eat these green beans with dinner tonight. So I'll wash them closer to when it's dinner time, when we go to eat them. My tomatillos are just starting to trickle in, and I don't really have enough to do anything with. I shouldn't say that, because if you saw on the counter earlier, I had little tiny 4-ounce jars. I have already made some jalapeno tomatillo salsa. I did that over the weekend, and I probably only used like 8 or 9 tomatillos. So not enough to make salsa verde or anything of any quantity. So I'm gonna wait, and once I have a significant amount, I will then process them. And here I am taking these beautiful bruschetta jars out of the canner. They are so pretty, and we cold packed these. So we were talking about cold packing versus hot packing. This is an example of cold packing. The brine technically was warm when I put it in, but it was all cool by the time I put it in, and the tomatoes didn't shrink too much. You can see how they did a little bit on that one jar, but in most of them, the tomatoes really didn't shrink. So this is me thinking that I probably am gonna try cold packing my diced tomatoes that I do. But like I said, let me know what your experience is. Now that we have the bruschetta out, I'm gonna get the plum sauce out, and I am just so blown away by the color of this plum sauce. It is the deepest red, almost purple color. It is absolutely beautiful and stunning. So I let these sit here and cool, and once they're cool, I will go ahead and write what they are, but I'll do that later. Now that we have the hot sauce that has cooked on the stove, I'm going to get this in our blender. I don't want to blend this. I have learned the hard way. You've probably seen it before if you've been around last year when we were preserving. When you're blending stuff from that's hot like this, you want to let it cool down, because if I was to turn the blender on, something happens and it kind of explodes, and it's really dangerous. So while that is cooling, I'm actually going to start dinner. I'm doing a crock pot series, so I have some Mongolian beef in the crock pot, and to go along with dinner, I need some rice. So I thought, let's go ahead and get that going right now in the Instant Pot. And I'm making a little extra because the next crock pot recipe I'm going to be doing is going to be a chicken and rice one, and I actually needed pre-cooked rice. So I'm cooking enough for tonight's dinner, plus some for the next recipe. So a little bit of food prep here. So we have our rice and our water. I'm gonna get the Instant Pot in. So look out for that video. That will be a fun video. It's gonna be 5 crock pot recipes, just like we did with the 5 Instant Pot recipes. So here like I said, I'm just keeping this vacuum sealer in here so I can use it as I need it. I'm gonna vacuum seal up these poblano peppers that I got diced up for later use. So I let this sit while I was doing a bunch of other stuff, because I've learned that if I turn this blender on when it's so hot, then it spews everywhere. So hopefully I've let it cool enough. I mean, it's still warm, that it's not going to spew everywhere. I let that blend for probably 5 or 6 minutes, and I should probably taste it. It's good. I don't taste the plum as much. It just tastes like a really good hot sauce, which I am not upset about. It smells good. I'm going to get this strained. If I was to make this again and I wanted it to taste more like plums, I probably should have added twice the amount of plums. Since I'm not canning this recipe, I can mess around with the ratios of things, but I think this still tastes delicious. It just tastes more to me like a hot sauce, not a plum hot sauce necessarily. So by straining it, I'm getting out any of the thick bits, like the seeds and the skins of the plum and the peppers. You don't have to do this, but I do it. So there's not that much pulp left. So I think it's worth it. You don't really lose that much product. You can dehydrate this or freeze dry it and turn it into a spice if you want. But I'm gonna turn this into chicken food. Chickens can't taste spiciness, so it doesn't hurt them. It's actually good for their gut to have them eat spicy stuff because they can't taste it, but it has the health benefits of it. Oop, did you hear that ping? That was one of the jars that sealed. So here's our hot sauce. I'll jar this up and stick this in the fridge for later enjoyment. I am chalking today up to a successful day at canning and preserving. We got 3 pints of our plum sauce and 2, 4, 6 pints, half pints of our plum sauce, 2, 4, 6, 8 of our pancetta, not pancetta, bruschetta. I've always wanted to make pancetta, and I've made homemade bacon before, but I've never made pancetta, so I think that would be fun to try that at some time. But that's not what we made today. We made bruschetta, and I'm excited to give this a try. I don't want to move it or anything. I'm going to let these cool here until tomorrow. I'll write on the lids what they are, and then they will go down on the pantry shelf. We have a whole table of tomatoes, so just more preservation projects coming, and I'm really just happy that it is food preservation season because this is one of my favorite seasons. So if you enjoyed this video, I just want to say thank you for taking time out of your day to spend time with me, and I can pop a couple of my other, I could pop a huge food preservation playlist if you enjoyed this. Right here you can go enjoy all the other fun things we have done in the kitchen over the years. So many fun things. And these 2 items are brand new things that I have never tried before. So I'm excited to pop these open with you and have the taste of summer all winter long. Kitchen's clean, and it is not even 11:30 yet. So I'm gonna have this last round can, and then I am done in the kitchen. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being you, and I can't wait to see you next time. Bye, friend.